We're going to look at today is an abundance of character. And I think what we're missing is moderation. And I'll explain. It's easy to filter down your life to only people who agree with you. We live in a world now where that's possible. Not only possible, it's probable. Not only probable, it's so easy to do that. And in that process, we begin to create teams. We begin to create these in-groups and out-groups. And the out-group is way out there, and the in-group is obviously in the know. And those two things can't really coexist, because there's always this way in which the people who are out there are out of it, out of their minds, whatever. And we over here have all the answers, and God, if they could just listen to us, hear what we're saying, then they'd really come around, and we finally get this thing turned right. Or left, as the case may be. But the problem is that when we do that, we're asking people to give up some sense of identity. Oftentimes for us, I am talking about politics now, we get that from our parents, or from our families of origin, or we get that from our friend group, or from school, or from whatever. And as time goes on, and people continue to tell you you're wrong, you continue to insist that you're right. And so we become entrapped in these ideologies that may or may not actually represent how we felt if we stopped and thought about it. I'm willing to admit, as progressive as I am, that I probably have a conservative streak. And that's really uncomfortable to admit. And it's uncomfortable to admit if you're around people who are progressive, that you may or may not have some conservative understandings. And I guarantee you, there are hardcore conservatives who feel the same way, that they have progressive streaks. And so when we're yelling at each other, we're standing across the aisle and telling each other how wrong they are, well, that doesn't give that person the opportunity to be vulnerable, to say, you know what, there is something that I kind of agree with you on. We're not giving people the space to do that. What does this have to do with God? Okay. Moving out of the political realm, we're doing this in our own lives. We are coming to something like this, right? I think many of us, I won't speak for everybody, but I think many of us have had a hard path to get to a place we call church. We had a hard time getting to a place where we said that we were the kind of people that pray, or that we are the kind of people that believe in God, or that we're the kind of people that read the Bible and the Quran and. But still, that we read those books. And not only that we read them, but that we took something from them, that we found in them something valuable, something that enriched and enhanced our lives. Because that is given to the realm of religion. And that's been really hard for some of us to be able to accept that. Certainly for me, in my life path, and I'm sure some of you have also had a similar experience. And when we do that, we essentially throw the baby out with the bathwater. Well, religion, is a bunch of dopes who believe in a wizard in the sky with a white beard, and he throws, his thunderbolts around or whatever. So therefore, there's nothing valuable that we can take from that ideology. And then these two things become polar opposites: spirituality, religion. These are two things that cannot synthesize. They cannot. There's no way in which they can speak to one another. And in doing that, we create a righteous indignation that spirituality is somehow then more evolved, somehow better than. Somehow the books that we read, because we read 3 of them instead of 1 of them, that makes us better human beings. Not just better human beings, but more capable of being understanding and loving and this, that, and the other thing. And I want to talk to you about something called spiritual bypassing. You ever heard this term, spiritual bypassing? Oh, this is my favorite. I love it when people do this. When people are like, oh, well, we're all one. We're all one. So therefore, you being this, that, or the other thing is not important because we're all one. And what that does is that bypasses having to do the work to understand that people are different, having different real-world experiences, having different constructs within the society that we've created. They're having different paths, different hurdles, different problems, different systemic things that they're bumping into. But no, that's not really happening because we're all one. That's bypassing. And we have a tendency as spiritual people to do the same thing. Well, if you would just give up that one specific idea you have about God being a wizard in the sky who throws thunderbolts, then you would have an open mind. Then you'd be able to see that all people should have the right to get married and everybody should be equal and all this stuff. Those two things are not the same. A lot of times people are not going to religion because they want to believe in a specific sense of God. People are going there because they're in pain. Oftentimes people are driven to religion because they just don't know what else to do. Have you had that experience? Because I have. I sure know that the day I walked through these doors here, if you had told me as a 24-year-old kid that I was going to come in here, no offense to the 24-year-olds in the room, but when I walked through these doors that I was going to be going to church, and I did it because I was in so much pain. I did not know what else to do. And I have to say that over time, I did not agree with everything that I learned. I did not agree that some things were the way that I was told that they were. I left behind what didn't work for me, and I took with me what did. And I've been able to patch together something that makes sense to me. And a lot of times people are doing that. They're getting themselves into a bucket that they don't necessarily need to be associated with, but there are things inside that bucket that are saving their lives. Can you hear what I'm saying to you? Yes. People are creating communities around ideologies because those ideologies mean something to them. So to walk up to somebody and say, that ideology that you have, that thing that you believe in, that's fundamentally stupid. What? That could be fighting words. Well, now I'm not going to listen to anything you have to say. You just call me stupid. And this is what we're doing. We're throwing people out because of those things that really mean something to them. Rather than saying, you mean something to me, and I want to understand. I want to understand where you're coming from. I want to understand why you believe this thing. I want to understand why this is important to you. How did you get there? What's the story? What's the story? What is it that you're afraid of that's making you think that this is the solution? And then I'm going to ask you to do one more thing. Not to judge the answer. That's the bypassing. Well, I'm going to be a great evolved human. I'm going to ask you, what in God's name made you vote for Donald Trump? And then you're going to answer me, and I'm going to walk away and still think you're stupid. Well, that's not helpful either. There has to be a genuine curiosity, a genuine desire to love and understand the person standing in front of you. That is something that takes work. That is something that requires an inventory of your own personal judgments. That is something that requires you to do the really, really hard stuff that spirituality gives you the tools to do. What are my preconceived ideas? What are the values that I have in my life that I think are absolutely undeniable? And then how am I placing that on to somebody else? That is unconditional love. At the moment, I think we can all agree that we're not living in a society full of unconditional love. We're living in a conditional love society. Okay, fine. So you come out of this room and you're thinking, well, great, Lex. Now what am I supposed to do? Because I'm not going to go out there and change the political landscape. You should try, I guess, but I don't think it's necessarily a good use of your time, but you do you. But what you can do is clean up your own relationships. The greatest threat to this democracy is not political leaders. It is the absolute refusal to engage in the dialogues that are necessary. And I know you didn't come here for a lecture on politics. But politics is such an easy example of what we're going through, isn't it? When you look out in the world and you read the news stories and you're starting to see this factioning of things, well, this is progressive and this is conservative and this is this and this is that. There's a nuance to life. There's always a nuance. People are paradoxical. People do one thing and believe another thing. That happens all the time. You do it, I do it, we do it. We know something's good for us, we go eat a cheeseburger. You have enough information to make good choices. You don't always make good choices, right? That's just part of life. From mess to message. From mess to message, A, means recognizing that you made a mess, which is sometimes incredibly hard to do. This is where that ability to inventory what's going on in your life becomes really important. When you get in too deep, you still have to have the security in yourself, as opposed to the insecurity, the security in yourself to recognize when you've made a mistake. Not just made a mistake, but when you blew something up. Not just blew something up, but you hurt somebody. Not just hurt somebody, but you may have ruined something, broken something. It might be you. You might have made a mess of yourself. To be able to stop that is to be able to interrupt that inner dialogue. Interrupting that inner dialogue requires unconditional love, which we just went over, yes? Now, once you know you made a mess, now you got to do something with that mess. I think we can all agree that healing does not have a linear progression, yes? Healing kind of goes all over the place. And a lot of times when a chaotic or traumatic event happens, you recognize that some trauma has taken place. It's easy to see that. Something horrible has happened, something big has happened, something's broken, something's devastated, something's on fire. Well, there's something distracting about big traumatic events because there's a lot to do. Okay, stay with me. There's a lot of tasks to do. There's a lot of things, tangible, concrete things that you can do when everything's hit the fan. I've got to pick up the pieces. I got to put this thing in order. I got to help this person. I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to do this. I got to do this. Well, that has its own comfort. There is a comfort in knowing what to do. And then when you get on the other side of all the tasks that are left to do, well, now that is a different level of healing. Now you're in the unknown. Now you're in the something hurts, but I don't know what it is. Something is broken, but I can't put my finger on it. I'm not sure exactly what to do next. That is another level of healing, okay? If you're thinking about this like a you know those geology things where they got the different rings, okay? So another layer of depth is something hurts, but I'm not sure what it is. And then you reach a point where everything is okay. I think it's wrong to say that you get over things. I think you learn to live with things, right? You bring it with you, and it's okay. It's like it's a companion. You know, it kind of hangs out with you, but, you know, it's like, it's not too rowdy. It doesn't cause a lot of problems. You know, it's like, it's cool, right? It's just my pet. Okay. But one of the things that allows you to really, what is the word I want? Alchemize, maybe, transform that pain is when you're able to share what you've learned. And this is a part that we really undervalue. Being able to share, not preach, not tell somebody what they have to do, just share. I went through this. This is what I was like. This is what it felt like. This is where I am now. Being able to share that is a transformational piece of healing. What it requires of you is that you give up the story. Okay? It requires that you stop telling the story in a way that continues to hurt you. Because if you're just telling the story over and over and over, in which you were still the victim, still hurt, still broken, still this, still that, you're just re-traumatizing yourself over and over and over. Where the message comes in is what you've allowed to transform. It's taking those really painful things, those really hurtful pieces, and transforming them into something that allows you to be more of who you are. Not telling a story of some way in which your capacity was diminished, or some way in which you were tarnished, or some way in which you were harmed, never to be repaired again. This is the redemptive aspect of healing. It's being able to share that message with somebody else who just needs to hear that story. They don't need the answers. They just need to know it's possible. This is where we are now. We just need to know it's possible. Something traumatic is happening. And I don't care where you fall. I really don't care about your politics. Something traumatic is happening. And we just need to know it's possible. It's possible to keep loving Uncle Jim that goes crazy at Thanksgiving dinner. It's possible to be able to stay in contact with your family. It's possible to still deal with that coworker. It's possible. It's possible to listen to somebody who you do not agree with and still find a way to love them. This is so crazy important right now. There aren't even words. I could just stammer through another 20 minutes of how ridiculously important this is. I told a story, I think maybe the last time I was here, maybe the time before that, of my good friend. He's my brother. I grew up with him since we were kids. I love him. He loves me. He is a skinhead. He is a bona fide, certified, white pride tattooed on his back skinhead. That is my brother. And you know what? We're both different people from loving one another. I'm not asking him to change. He's not asking me to change. I can't change him. He can't change me. But there's still something redemptive. And I know that because I grew up with him. I know what he was like when he was a kid. He knows what I was like when I was a kid. And in every person that you're meeting, there is still that kid in there. There is still something redemptive. I'm not going to go down the moral landslide of, are there people who are not redemptive? We'll leave that story for another day. But 99.99999% of people you are going to run into in your life, there is still something redemptive in that person. And if you remove the mask of your own ideology and you allow yourself to see that person through a lens of pure curiosity, of absolute unconditional love. I do not put limitations on my ability to respect your dignity, my ability to respect your humanity. How did you get here? That kind of curiosity. We are going to live in a completely different world. And that is what we need, now more than ever. How do you get there? You got to check yourself. Because we all come into our lives, our friendships, our relationships, with all these preconceived ideas. And of course we think we're right because we think we're awesome. If you don't think you're awesome, that's something else you got to work on. Of course you're awesome. You're awesome. You're super special. But there's also some level at which you're not as awesome as you think you are. You're great. Well, maybe not that great, you know. You're not the greatest ever, you know. And you have to be able to check yourself and continually just take inventory. I think these kind of people are absolutely ridiculous. Why do I think that? Like, where did that even come from? Where did I hear that? Where did I read that? Or, you know, it's the alternative facts, fake news thing, right? Well, I read an article that said there are no such thing as dinosaurs. So obviously there are no such thing as dinosaurs. Well, hey, let's maybe look that up. Like maybe let's take a moment and see if that's real. Well, you're doing the same thing inside. I realize that when I see a certain kind of person, I think that kind of person is X, Y, and Z. Why do I think that? Where did that come from? Where did I get that? Who told me that? And it turns out that it was your, Grandma Phyllis who told you that for whatever reason, people who are polka dotted are dumb. And you're like, well, is that true? And just even being able to be willing to ask yourself, is that true? Just to continuously take inventory like that, is that true? It's going to allow you to live in a different place. It doesn't make you all of a sudden unconditionally loving. Hey, guess what? You're not going to get there overnight. Most of us are probably not going to get there in our lifetime, but that does not mean you can't try. Just because you may not be able to be the Dalai Lama and you don't levitate off the ground 3 feet doesn't mean that you can't try your best in your life to be loving. And we can't curate. Oh, here's where I started. You can't curate your life to only include people that you like. That's a problem. First of all, it's going to be you hanging out with you all the time. It's going to be a very lonely existence because eventually somebody's going to do something where you're like, well, I knew you were dumb. It's just going to be you hanging out with you. And then half the time, you're not even going to want to hang out with you, which is not really an option. So you're going to have to expand your ability to love people, to accept people, to be curious about people. I say something all the time, which I didn't realize I said until somebody pointed it out. I always say, that's interesting. Somebody says something crazy, and I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting. Oh, I hadn't thought about that. I mean, I think that's a little crazy, but that's interesting. Just having that sense of curiosity in our lives and in our relationships. I don't know how many of you are in long-term committed relationships, but Lord have mercy. Do the people you love have a way of testing you like nobody else when it comes to be unconditionally loving? Like, I don't know why you cannot just put the top back on the toothpaste. Why is this such a problem? And the more I get upset, the more they don't want to help me. The more they're like, forget it. I don't care if the top is on the toothpaste. That's a you problem. And they're right. That is a me problem. Well, how many things in our life is a you problem? Some things are way outside your control. There are things going on that we have no ability to get in there and fix. We'll talk about the idea of fixing later. But we do have the ability to control how we respond. If you allow yourself to get so spun out of control that you are just, flames are coming out the top of your head, that's a you problem. You have got to be in better control of yourself. Nobody should have that kind of power over your life. Nobody should have that kind of power over your life. And if you are the type of person that has a solution for everybody else's problems, you always know the answer, you always know how to fix it, that also might be a you problem. You might have something you gotta look at, okay? Some of us, we all have addictions.
Speak for yourself.
No, sir. We all have addictions.
I don't have any addiction.
Okay, great. Excellent. I'm very happy for
My
you.
first time here.
Great. Welcome. Okay. All right. Take care. We all have addictions.
I don't.
So, for those of us who are not necessarily addicted to substances, we may find ourselves addicted to something else, including drama. Drama is an addiction. Attention is an addiction. If you find yourself inserting yourself into other people's problems all the time, that might be an addiction. And part of that is that we have to feel good about ourselves solving something. Like we got stuff so out of control in our own lives that we got to go fix somebody else's life. That's a you problem. And if you can take inventory of that and notice when you're putting forth that behavior, you don't have to necessarily do anything. I mean, your friends would probably appreciate if you did something about it, but say you didn't do anything about it. Just noticing that that's what's going on and bringing that back home, that is going to make a huge difference in your relationships and in your life and in your ability to connect with other people. And there's something I always tell my kids that I want you to know. You do not get credit for putting out fires you started. You do not get credit for putting out fires you started. You caused the problem, and then you put out the fire, and then you want me to give you kudos. That's not going to happen. You're responsible for your own fires. And that's all I'm asking for us to do, is to be responsible for the fires that we are starting. Where are you causing a problem that doesn't need to be a problem? Where are you causing a rift or a separation where there does not need to be a separation? If somebody is ideologically opposed to you, it is not the same as there being a problem. Right now, I am fearful. I am fearful of the world we live in. And I am fearful because of the consequences. The consequences for my own life, the consequences for my kids' lives. And fear has its place. Pain has its place. It would be silly of us to assume that pain was bad, or that pain was something we needed to avoid. Evolutionarily speaking, pain is an alert system. It is showing you that something requires attention. And our emotional pain, our spiritual pain, is the same. That fear that I'm feeling is because something is requiring my attention. Now, evolution would tell me fight, flight, or freeze. Either got to get out of here, we got to put up a fight, or I don't know, freeze in the headlights and get run over. But we're not in a situation anymore where those are the only three options. As you are moving along your spiritual path, you are developing tools. You're developing the muscles that you need to be able to push past those three choices when you're feeling fear, when you're feeling pain. That's the entire reason you're in here. Maybe you don't think it's the reason you're in here, but I promise it's the reason you're in here. Is to be able to have a depth of capacity to handle those things. Hopefully you don't come here thinking that Reverend Deborah's going to give you the answers, that I'm going to give you the answers. Right? I'm sure you didn't come here thinking I was going to give you the answer. But there is nobody who can give you those answers. All we can do is provide you with perspective. provides you with a depth of understanding. And from that depth, you can make different choices. Where at one time, the only option may have been to run away or to fight, now there's an option to love. We have evolved to a point where our kinship is no longer trapped within our own families or even within our own communities. We've also evolved to a point where you have the option to curate your communities. I am asking you to expand that understanding, to reach outside of your own ideological sense of the world and see what's going on. Just be curious. Curiosity is such a gift. There aren't good ideas and bad ideas. There aren't good people and bad people. There aren't good things and bad things. There's just experiences. And in each of those experiences, we always have the opportunity to love. As you continue to deepen that capacity, I encourage you to try that out. Try that out. Because the world needs your curiosity now more than ever. Let's pray.